What's good, YouTube and Twitch? We're live to both with what's going to be a very long video. We are going to go over the entire Forbidden and Limited list and say why each and every card got on here throughout Yu-Gi-Oh! History, and then my own personal thoughts on if that card could peel off the list and be pretty good. Let's go ahead and get into it. And to note,
light stage to 3.
Starting off with people's ban list opinions already that are right or wrong. We are going to be going through all this. To note, the upcoming September ban list could be available to shake this up, and the ban list is going to change through history. So check the date of this video, and maybe it's, you know, shaken up and changed since. But let's start with Astrograph Sorcerer. This is actually a hand trap that also gives resources, but pendulums are able to make so much more use of this, especially in the modern day pendulums, of being able to pop things and then get him to get another piece. Like, it's a very good resource game, and that's why he's on the list. Do I think it could peel off? I would like to experiment with it at one, but I still think he deserves his place on the list today. Blackwing Gofu is a tuner that summons 2 tokens. So with Link summoning having become a thing in Master Rule 4, token summoning got very strong, and it still is today. 1 card becoming 3 is just an insane resource, and now a tuner body also has problems with needle fiber. So I'm gonna say that this definitely deserves to be on the list, and still does. Like, it's absurd advantage, and even back, there's other decks that would like use Mass Change too, because it's already so much advantage on its own, to help turn things into Dark Law on top. Man, the memories. Blaster Dragon Ruler of Infernos. All the Dragon Rulers got banned. It was memed at the time as if there was the Hercules movie, and these are the Titans locked up that will be freed one day, and so far it's just Tempest free. 1 of the 4 are out there. Blaster gains advantage by forcing things on the field since he gets destruction abilities. I think he could come back to 1 at this point, but he's in jail for past formats horrors. Cyber Jar is a card that flips up and destroys everything, and then gives access to both players to special summon up to 5 cards. Like, this card's power can't be understated. Empty Jar is a deck as well. I think it needs to stay. Dandelion is on here mainly because in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Token generation, again, with cards is too much for Link summoning, but also because plant decks do so freaking much.
Now let's start this list off right. No. Maxx C to 3 Fairy Tale Snow
Chat,
to 3
no!
to 3 Zexal. Untouched,
why?
Mystic Mine untouched, Alistair Anush Meltdown.
This isn't that kind of ban list video.
Ban, though he ain't
this
right.
isn't that
also,
kind of
Papa
video. It's not
like
the usual YouTuber
snack.
rule of predictions and that kind of stuff. Not that kind of video. Dandelion is on here for the sins of needle fiber, aka Halki Fibrax, and the ability for plant synchro to do so much in the modern era. Again, token generation, as we see with Gofu, is its reason on the list mainly, though. Destrudo is a tuner that has to pay half your life points to recur, but also has a dragon level 7 body, and is a tuner that adapts to constantly help bring out sync 7s. With needle fiber, that's a bit much. Its searchability with dragon ravine's a bit much, and as much as I loved playing the card, as much as it felt good to combo with it and having to pay half your life points, I think he deserves to be on here. Djinn ended up here because of Nekroz format. Djinn Nekroz is commonly quoted, you might have heard of it, the fables of people locking each other out and having to play outs in their deck exclusively to try to take care of this. Now, Burning Abyss got Farfa, kind of a more natural out to be able to clear the board, and that's why in Nekroz format, Burning Abyss is the 1st and 2nd place at that Nationals. Does it still deserve to be here? Absolutely. You don't need this free card that is dumpable from the deck in certain ways, or able to be used in a ritual summon and give the power from the graveyard to lock somebody completely out of the extra deck. Like, that's ridiculous in my opinion. Like, that doesn't need to happen. Actually, I think it's all special summons, if I'm not mistaken. So, just a crazy amount of power. Let's double check that one. Djinn, we're gonna be here a while in this video. I want to make sure we get it right. Djinn, releaser of rituals. This man's it stops if a player ritual summons using it, the other player cannot special summon, period, while it's face up on the field. Indeed. So even an extra power past the extra deck, it stops them from just special summoning, period, absurd. Double Iris Magician is on here. Konami has this thing against pendulums throughout this, the first like page or so. You're gonna see, we counted it, over 8 pendulum cards, and I think Double Iris Magician gets this free advantage for the pendulum graph cards in terms of you can pop it in scale, get a free card, bring it back, it does more. I don't think it deserves to be on here though. I think it could be at 1 or even 2, maybe unleashed to 3, but I don't think it should be forbidden at this point personally, and I like the back and forth with the time pendulum trap card actually mattering. Eclipse Weaver ended up recently because of its resource game and the Chaos Dragons growing stronger and stronger. It's more of a recent hit, and I think it does deserve to stick on here because with the Chaos Dragons, it just generates too much searchability and advantage throughout your deck to continue comboing your opponent and get resources later after forcing all their negation or plays. Fairy Tale Snow does not have a hard once per turn clause and can come back from the graveyard time and time again. I feel like it got more so hit because we started to get other cards like Curious in the game that could send it to the graveyard anytime, and that accessibility from deck was too much. I think it still deserves to be here. The ability to just loop Disruption over and over, where modern versions like Gizmek Orochi pops out but has a once per turn clause where this doesn't. The resource game of Snow is just too much and too far. Fiber Jar is one of the original troll cards that restarts the duel. Just straight up, all the graveyards and fields are shuffled in the deck, and each player draws 5. It restarts the duel, and I feel like even though in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! That couldn't be a problem, it's such a problem card in just the fact of frustration that it could put on players, is why it's still here in the way that it's here.
Don't forget Scapegoat.
It's not that kind of Banlist video.
And most importantly, Mystic Mind can stay at 3. Smiley face.
Fishborg Blaster, if I recall, is just too, like, recursive. I feel like this is one of the eras where I didn't play, but if I recall, Fishborg Blaster, did it have something to do with the Master Driver OTK? It's a tuner body as well. I'm pretty sure it had to do with that, and it's here. I feel like it would be fine in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Let's read this card. Fishborg Blaster. Let's make sure I'm not crazy. Let's see this bad boy. Fishborg Blaster in the Konami database is a water level 1. It is a tuner. If you control a face-up level 3 or lower water monster, you can discard a card, special summon this from the hand. If it's used as a synchro material, all other synchros must be water. I feel like this could come back unless I'm missing something. People are saying stay banned. I feel like this could come back unless I'm missing something big in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Glow Up Bulb is banned pretty much purely because of needle fiber. There's no other reason. Again, the plant synchro stuff got hit early. It's a tuner that can recur itself, and that ends up being problematic to Konami, despite Jet Synchron being a thing currently today. I think it should be out and free, but it's locked here behind the doors. You have to pay a card for Jet Synchron. Grinder Golem produces 2 tokens and has loops with Security Dragon, Orcust Magician, so many other things. So I think it's still, we don't need Lithium quoting this in every single video. It deserves its place. Level Eater is almost infinite recursion, and with Link summoning, that was a problem. And just as Kaiju Link was becoming a thing, the weekend that you could play it first, it got banned right after that. It was an OTS day. So Level Eater, again, it's full recursion, not just with Link summoning, but now, you know, Synchro, Link summoning, all those decks. Lunalight Tiger ended up on here just for being degenerate and making Lunalights able to loops my brother and get too much advantage. Do I think it deserves to be here? Absolutely still today. It has a ton of fans that might be mad for that, but Lunalights were getting very powerful, and while they hit as a thought, which you'll see later also, I think that this deck needed checks and balances, especially coming into Master Rule 5. Magical Scientist is able to just keep popping things out of the extra deck, which is a lot of resources. He's the original FTK enabler with Last Will and Catapult Turtle, and I think deserves to still be here. The fact that you could pay 7,000 and get 7 different bodies to link summon with, not to mention that they are also going to have effects as fusion monsters. Totally deserves to be here. Kirin has the word that all Magispectors have. It cannot be targeted or destroyed, and is also a quick bounce in Yu-Gi-Oh! That is searchable by Bambuku. That's how he ended up here. It was being played as an engine with just Bambuku and himself, and because of all that power and armor he has with disruption ability, I think he deserves to stay here for sure, but it would be interesting to see him in the modern day world and see how much of a boost it actually would give to Pendulums. Makyura the Destructor is getting an errata in Japan. It's an FTK enabler as it was previously, but now I believe they errated it to only deal with activating one trap for the turn and brought it back in Japan, so we should see it follow here eventually. I'm not the biggest fan of errataing cards and making them shells of them former selves, but Konami does that whenever they please. Masterpiece is on here because he is a quick pop on top of a towers-like monster. While there's usually a chink in his armor, and the fact that you contribute a spell in a trap, or a monster in a trap, or a monster in a spell to bring him out, and he's only going to get armor between two of those, he is still a freaking powerful card with a quick pop, and I don't think is okay by modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Standards still, but he got banned with a lot of... True Draco ended up on the list a lot, and has slowly been getting released back over time. He deserves to stay. Maxx C, this is one of those cards that they experimenting trying to put, you know, down in different parts of the list, but eventually just banned. I say he's fine at either 0 to 3. He was a check and balance, but just kind of became too degenerate at certain parts of the games. Now we have balances with hand traps. I do think it would be interesting to see at 3, but either 0 or 3 is always the reasoning in the game. It's just a huge advantage engine, and why Maxx C is banned is, it's so, like, if one person draws Maxx C, right, and activates it, and the other person's playing a special summon deck, like, that's the metagame, well, they're stopped in their tracks, and if they didn't draw Maxx C, they're dying. That's kind of the Maxx C challenge, as it used to be called. And whenever you would try to play through it, and now there's more hand traps to go with that, so taking the Maxx C challenge is even harder today. But yeah, the person who draws this first just has too much advantage. Mind Master is a psychic, I believe, tuner that's able to be brought out by teleport, and it may have abilities to loop with certain cards. Let me look this up real quick. Mind Master Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't want to get any, since we're putting so much work into this video, really get anything too wrong with it. You can pay 800 life points and tribute a psychic type monster, except Mastermind, to special summon a level 4 or lower from your deck in face-up attack position. So this is not a once per turn, and with the field spell that psychics have, you not only would not be paying 800 so that you could do this infinitely, you'd be able to get to loop status with that, and that's a problem. And I think it should stay banned. Orcust Harp Horror was to check and balance Orcust from the more recent formats, and it's one of the power cards for it, and they now have Girsu as well, powering them up again, but they have a lot of bricks. Do I think it could come back? I think it could peel off to 1 to see what would happen, but even at 1, like, that's the engine. That Orcust the engine is back, so you have Orcust the engine and the deck, and making that engine able to be played so widespread is a bit of a problem, so I understand why it's still here. Performage Plushfire, I think, could come off the list at this point. This guy would combo back in the day with Luster in order to get free advantage on board, and I get there is a problem whenever you can pop something to get free advantage in Pendulums, but I think by today's standards, having to play the entire Performage engine would be a bit much, but not the worst deal in the world either. Monkey Board is a scale that grabs another piece of advantage, and those pieces of advantage can be draws like Lizard Draw, Guitardle, that kind of stuff, and you're able to pop your scales all the easier these days, so I do think Monkey Board deserves to stay on here as a scale that can just be played, but that's why it's gone. Pepe format saw all 3 of these banned. Joker, I believe, has danced on and off the list, if I'm not mistaken. He's an 1800 searcher for Performapal, and I believe it might also be Pendulum Magicians. I'd have to look. Let's make sure of that. I know he does things with multiple cards. Performapal. Skullcrobat Joker. I believe he searches, or has an interaction with multiple. You can, when this card is normal summoned, You can add a Performapal monster, Magician, or a Pendulum monster, or Odd Eyes monster. So yeah, he searches a wide range of things, and Pendulum Magicians at one point became very powerful, and I think that's when he stuck back on the list, if I'm not mistaken. My ban list memory's a little fuzzy there, but as an 1800 searcher with that wide of a range, that's why he's here. I think he'd be fine being back right now. I think it would be okay to have him around at this point. I think the scale part is more dangerous with Monkey Board. Phoenix Cluster Amaryllis is here simply because it helps FTKs and burn FTKs, and I think it deserves to stay on here. Redox is probably the most powerful of the Dragon Rulers still, for the ability to have recursion from the graveyard, and I think it deserves to stay on here if any of the Dragon Rulers do. And he would be the one I would stick on there. Samsara Lotus also here for FTKs, more modernly with Firewall, but he still has one somehow. I've seen it somewhere, so any FTK enabler / hand loop enabler tends to end up on the list and stick there. Spiral Master Plan is a huge resource game for spirals, which were recently coming back into the metagame. So spirals have dodged list after list after list till finally Master Plan has ended up on here, and that seems to have silenced them for a good while. Substitoad is the good old Toad FTK with Mass Driver, and he's an insane resource for frog decks. Definitely deserves his place on the list. The Tyrant Neptune is one of the cards, along with Supreme King Dragon Starving Venom, that died. I believe it's a card called Nightingale's Sins that's able to be used in different FTKs. So both of these have died for that card and are here on the list instead of that card going. Tidal Dragon Ruler of Waterfalls is a card that could give maybe Mermail Atlanteans some extra oomph or power, but I think could come off the list. I honestly think it'd be interesting to see what Tidal would do in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! But he's here, as all the Dragon Rulers are, from back in Dragon Ruler format, and them being extremely powerful. Victory Dragon is on this list simply because there's this contradictory and this monster can win the whole match for you if it attacks directly and ends a game. So whenever you're entering battle phase, that person can just say, I scoop, and you never get the attack, ruining the whole purpose of the card, resulting in arguments within Yu-Gi-Oh! And almost all cards like this in the future were printed with this can't be used in a duel, just to avoid that argument. Yata is the original bringer of nightmares, and one of the reasons the Forbidden List was created in the first place. He stops the opponent from drawing next turn if he gets an attack in. People have argued that it could come back in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! I personally just don't want to see more cards off the list that say, you can't play the game, you can't play the game. So I do think it earned its place on here on the list, as it was part of the reason the list was created. Elder Entity Norden, people blame Instant Fusion kind of for it, but it's actually Fusion Sub-Zoo that was making Norden over and over and over again, so we see it's not just as an insane Instant Fusion target into a rank 4 as a cool tool, but that it could get looped over in crazy amounts, and definitely deserves to be here. We discussed Starving Venom. Thunder Dragon Colossus is a walking, self-protecting card that stops your opponent from searching the deck, and a lot of people argue that it should be back at 1 still. I played the deck and think it did deserve its slot, and Nemesis Corridor is a modern monster that allows any deck to make it, but Japan still has it around at 1, and it's a rogue deck, not a top deck. I think it could come back to 1, but I personally like its place on the list. Firewall Dragon was the problem card. I don't care what you say. It has 2 effects that are not hard once per turns that allow you to basically special summon infinitely out of your hand and also recur graveyard resources. As an ace monster of a protagonist, it took a while for Konami to get it here, but it got banned because of that, and its ability to just keep generating fields, and it became the center of too many FTKs. FTKs are first turn kills, by the way, if you're in this video and you're wondering what that term means. But Firewall Dragon, it earned its place here by far and was the problem card. Guard Dragon Argapane! This card breaks into the extra deck for dragons and just summons boss monsters. So it literally breaks the game and just puts out broken monsters, then you link it away into other pieces. The Guard Dragon engine is actually being argued to be hit further by duelists, and I think still in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! With the Dragon decks doing so well, yes, it deserves to be here. Electromite got hit kind of as a screw job by Konami. They've been over-aggressive on Pendulums, and while this card is very broken, it's had multiple formats where it kind of did define the format. I think Electromite at this point is okay in the game, but they keep hitting Pendulums and making them want to be forgotten, so Electromite is here. and banned, and they're probably going to keep it banned, but I think it could come back to 1. Pendulums ruined the game. No, they didn't. They never did. Nightmare Goblin is a card that co-linked gives strength to monsters around it, but also provides an additional normal summon. This was too much for Yu-Gi-Oh! To just have the ability to have a semi-generic monster in the extra deck continue to let people go up their turns, as a lot of monsters are purposely locked to get their effects only on normal summon to balance them. This enabled them, and also enabled the resources to just continue out, and then people would link up and off with it, or make strong co-links. Nightmare Mermaid is another link that would access Ibly from the extra deck, help lock the opponent out of their extra deck by forcing them into odd positions, and also would be a big resource for Orcust later on, and that's why it got banned. Summon Sorceress was an enabler for almost every deck, so a lot of people liked this card. It would allow you to summon cards of the same typing, so zombies saw tops and success with this, but other decks like Dark Warrior used it to a much bigger advantage, and it just was too good for too many decks to climb up, and when all decks are going at the same rate in Yu-Gi-Oh! Up through one path, those cards get banned, and I think it deserves to stay banned. The Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche is a card that you can't link summon up with, one of the first cards we see that can't be used as a link material as Konami tries to give balances, but it's a plus freaking 3. You're gonna send the Phantom Knight, you're gonna get a Phantom Knight, and then you're gonna get, like, the instructions and stuff. Like, this card is absurd, and we have Phantom Knight support coming up, so Konami may actually release it to help that out, but this got banned in part due to Orcust and the absurd advantage it would generate, and I think it deserves to stay banned for the amount of advantage it generates. Topologic Gumblar Dragon is banned because it helps hand loop. You already have the Neospace Connector Aqua Dolphin taking out the first parts of hands, and this will take 4 more cards out, leaving your opponent with 1 card. That's way too powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! And the resource games are even stronger today. Ancient Fairy Dragon, the only banned Signer Dragon, is here because it helps with field spells, and field spells have become very generically powerful to the point we've had to choke out cards like Terraforming and make sure that things aren't as searchable. So that's why it's here. Do I think it deserves to be banned? Yes. Field spells in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Are very powerful. These two go kind of hand in hand. They're synchro tuners that get extra advantage. Dinglong helps set up multiple negates. Ib either can do resources or negates in terms of what it's helping out in the build-a-board workshops, and they're both banned due to needle fiber, and I think deserve to stay banned, but many people wish they were free and think they'd be okay with needle fiber. Tempest Magician is here because the ability to FTK with spell counters got way stronger after the extra deck. My chats are continuously typing and not adding to this conversation as I wish they would, which is why I did this live. Instead, they like to torture me. Tempest Magician here is an FTK enabler, and I think that completely deserves to stay on the list. Lavavel Chain gets to either stack your deck or Foolish Burial from the deck. That is very, very powerful, and with only 2 cards instead of 3 like Curious, it's so accessible to make and deserves the place it has on the list. MX Saber Invoker, you make this into modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! With the ability to whatever you're bringing out not only be a resource, but also go up into Isolde. It deserves to stay banned. It's had multiple formats where it was just a problematic card, and it deserves its place on the list because of its ability to generate those resources. Number 16, Shockmaster. It completely locks people from being able to play one typing spell, monster, or trap, and whenever you have this generic floodgate-like monster, you don't unlock the shock. It deserves to be here. Number 42, Galaxy Tomahawk. It generates a ton of tokens. We've talked about tokens and link summoning as it is. At least it has some balances with it, but still, just summoning all those tokens and going link, 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 link off of 2 level 7s is too much for Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now still, and I think it deserves its place on the list still. Heroic Champion Ragnamazad, good old Rongo Bongo as it was called, stops people from playing completely when you have enough materials on it, and for that reason, it makes the list and stays on the list. Number 95, Galaxy Dark Matter Dragon used to be called Doesn't Matter Dragon because the weekend it came out, pretty much that's when the Dragon Rulers finally all went from 1 to none. I think that this card deserves to stay on the list in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Because resourcing the deck and taking care of your opponent's resources is very powerful, and I think it's a bit much now versus what it used to be. It's definitely Matters Dragon, and enabled some FTKs with Gandora, if I recall as well. Outer Entity Azathoth, that thought over there. This card stops people from playing the game, and people kept figuring out ways to summon it on the opponent's turn, which is also maybe why Ptolemaeus is here. Ptolemaeus could go up into Azathoth as the most recent dangerous thing for it, but Ptolemaeus is on the list for a different reason. The ability to summon this out on the opponent's turn is why Azathoth ended up on here, and I still think is a degenerate card in terms of being able to make it on their own turn to stop the opponent from responding, and going up combo trees is also pretty powerful. Salmon Great Mirage Stalio was really on here mostly to hit Salmon Great as they hit other decks around it, and I think it kind of deserved it at the time. I think it could peel off the list at any time as well, but Salmon Great is still a very good deck. You see it in Rogue play, even taking down an online tournament here or there while we're stuck inside. So yeah, it's hit kind of to limit the ability of the deck. Ptolemaeus ended up on the list from Pepe format with the ability to go into Cybernova Dragon, into Infinity. Putting negates on board was very powerful back then. And then, like I said, in modern history, probably Azathoth could it come off now. It has this thing where if you have 7 materials, you skip your opponent's turn. That's still a very powerful phrase in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm sure there would be some way to abuse it. So I'd prefer it to stay on the list, but maybe it wouldn't be that big of a problem. Wind-up carriers and Matey, free the boat! Ban the Hunter. It's part of hand loops with Hunter, and Hunter is still off the list right now, so I could see this coming back if they banned Hunter, but to ban one card just to unban another, it's a bit much, but people will, for some reason, that haven't lived through wind-up format, want to see this come off, but that's why it's on here, is the ability to just do absurd resource things. Zodiac Broadbull is on here, speaking of resources, for its ability. It was able to help with the fusion sub stuff. Also, in the Zodiac engine has been released. I could see this coming off the list to try to help sell Tri-Brigade. Doesn't do anything insanely broken in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Not as bad as it used to, but it's still a pretty crazy card in terms of what it can search. Brilliant Fusion, the ability to go Seraphonite from extra deck, and also Foolish Burial 2 cards. Very powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think it deserves its spot on here, but that's why it's banned. I loved playing Brilliant Fusion in so many decks. It would make so many rogue decks viable, but Gem Knight FTK is a thing. That's not really why it's here. It's more so that the ability to just resource the deck generically and get another normal summon became way too powerful for Yu-Gi-Oh! Butterfly Dagger Elma has infinite loops with itself, so that's why it's banned, and I think anything that causes infinite loops should stay banned. Card of Safe Return, every time cards are returning from the graveyard, you draw a card. Pot of Greed's a problem in Yu-Gi-Oh! On its own. This card generated way too much advantage, and we're dipping into the graveyard more and more with cards, and it limits card design in the future, so it absolutely deserves to stay banned. Change of Heart takes any monster, makes it your own, and with Link Summoning, that's all the more powerful. It can do face down, face up, everything, and while it does target, I think it deserves to stay here, but that's why it's banned. It's just able to take anything, and you can still tribute or do whatever you want with it. Chicken Game is pay 1,000 draw, which on the surface doesn't seem too powerful, but cards like Upstart in Yu-Gi-Oh! And thinning the deck are a problem. It also has like this attack floodgate-like thing that tries to stop you from dying, hence the name Chicken Game. But it was used and abused in FTK decks as extra ways to draw, and then you could pseudo space on top of it, which is able to copy a field spell from the graveyard and get its effect again. Cold Wave stops people from being able to play their spells and traps, just freezing people over on that aspect. That is crazy in Yu-Gi-Oh! And the fact this made it all the way to like Rescue Cat format, like with the X-Sabers and stuff, is mind-blowing, and it deserves its slot on here. Just, yeah, you can't play again, but lock down all back row. Confiscation and Delinquent Duo are both cards that hit the hand. Confiscation lets you look and take care of a problem. Delinquent Duo does one random card and your opponent picks one. A 2-for-1 and hand loop problems being still in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't think that should be a thing. Confiscation. Wow, being able to look at the hand and pick and choose, also a huge problem. They both deserve to stay banned. Dimension Fusion, pay 2,000 and access your banish pile. As we talked about with Chaos Dragons being a problem with Eclipse Weaver, banishing is easier and easier in Yu-Gi-Oh! And being able to throw up a ton of cards on the field after already link summoning to clear the field for that and continue link summoning is a huge problem in Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't think you should be able to have that access. Giant Trunade bounces everything, which also can cause loops with your own cards, which is why other cards end up on the FNL list. But I do think that Giant Trunade you have like one of the good examples. They didn't errata it, they made a retrain called Hey Trunade, and it only does face down cards so that people can react with their cards. So you see kind of Konami, instead of errataing something, creating a new card. That's how I like to see Yu-Gi-Oh handled, but because of the ability to use your own resources again, it's a bit too powerful. Graceful Charity, draw 3, discard 2. So many cards get extra ability to get graveyard effects. This is argued to be probably one of the best 5 cards on the FNL list. Definitely deserves its spot, and that's why it's banned. Harpy's Feather Duster, it's actually off the list in Japan, and I think the only reason it's on the list currently, it destroys all the opponent's back row, is that you're selling Lightning Storm if you're Konami. There's this new card that either destroys all your opponent's back row or kills all their monsters, only if you don't control a card, so it limits its power versus the banned cards. But I think that it's only on here until Konami's done selling Lightning Storm by reprinting it a few times. Heavy Storm is on the list because destroying your own cards can actually give you more of an advantage rather than a cost in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! You're not setting up the field as much, so there are cards you might want in the graveyard to pop, like, just to name one, Frightful Vendor, or Fluffle Vendor. You're able to, like, pop that. Toy Vendor, gosh dang it. You're able to pop Toy Vendor and get a free advantage after having used it without having to have a graveyard way to destroy it. Kaiser Coliseum is on here because it promotes not playing the game. It limits how your opponent can interact with the game and what they can do. So, with this card, I would like to say that Konami doesn't like cards like that, but Mystic Mind's at 3. Definitely deserves to stay here, and I hope Mystic Mind joins it. Last Will is a card that just enables cards to come out of the deck and do crazy things whenever the conditions met. So I think Last Will is a bit too crazy of an enabler. It was made all the way back in Starter Deck Yu-Gi, the very beginning of the game. And as certain other interactions come out, it's unhealthy. It deserves to stay on here. Mass Driver is a card that literally distributes monsters to do damage, but as a spell and not a monster. Japan, I think, even hit the monsters that start doing that stuff, but this earned itself its place with Frog FDK. As we mentioned, FDKs with Last Will, Scientist FDK abused that. Metamorphosis tributes any monster and brings out a fusion monster from the extra deck of the same level as a summon. I think that's very, very powerful for what it is, and yeah, it deserves to be banned. Being able to just get broken fusions out for synchro climbing in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! That in and of itself is a bit much. Mirage of Nightmare is here. Spell and Trap Destruction has gotten even better since. So basically, you would empty your hand, then get to draw off Mirage of Nightmare, then destroy your own Mirage of Nightmare and keep your extra draws. That's very powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! And even though there's more counters to it in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, I think it deserves its place still. Painful Choice. You get a card and get to send 4 in the graveyard. As card design has gone forward, well, you want to dump more cards. Even back in the day, why it got banned is you would like either choose 5 broken cards and get one of them, or you would dump a bunch of cards you don't want and fuel your chaos cards, and then get one card that was less desirable to your hand while enabling your most powerful ones. And modern Yu-Gi-Oh! So many cards want to be in the graveyard from the deck to get their effects that you would just be popping off by activating this. Pot of Greed draws 2 cards. That's what it does. The joke's over. Drawing extra cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a bit much, and the first person to see this would be at an advantage, and they've even remade cards that have such high costs like Pot of Desires, banishing 10 cards, and being a hard once per turn, versus like this card. So, yeah, the retrains saw high meta play. Imagine just doing it for free. Premature Burial has bounce loops and is also free revival in terms of just paying 800 life points. So with that equip ability as well, you have modern cards actually liking the equips, searching with Power Tool Dragon, that sort of stuff. Definitely deserves to stay on the list, and it's banned actually, I think, for DeLorean loops, if I'm not mistaken, but loops of some kind were able to be used with it by its wording. Rank Up Magic Argent Chaos Force was summoning S0 too much. Now we have the Numeron network for that, but it's here mainly for that, and it's stuck here for that. Sky Striker Mobilize Engage is basically Pot of Greed, but you get to choose one of the searches, and the Sky Striker engine and Sky Strikers were a meta deck for just too long of a time, so they earned their place here for sure, and I think it's going to stick here for a long time. Snatch Steal came off the list once for just a small period. Konami reversed that instantly, and it's going to stick on the list, I think, after that. Just taking a monster permanently and doing whatever you want till they deal with the Spell and Trap Destruction, that's crazy. Soul Charge is reviving everything. everything. It's crazy. So, you pay life points to do so, though. We already discussed this with Destrudo, paying half your life points for one tuner, and it's on the forbidden list. Now imagine doing it with a ton of your resources throughout the turn, and recurring effects and that sort of thing. So yeah, it deserves to stay here. And people would call it Salt Charge when it was at 1. Konami tried to limit it for a while. Golly. Spellbook of Judgment is like infinite resource game. People have been clamoring for it to come back that have modernly found the deck. Anybody who played during that era will tell you, heck no, don't you dare do it. And I think it deserves to stay on the list for the absurd amount of resources it can get you. Oh, but they don't do enough. Yeah, they do. That grass looks greener, dumps a bunch of cards to the graveyard if your deck is higher than your opponent, till you have the same number as the opponent, with, again, resources in the graveyard being so present in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like Orcust and Burning Abyss. This card just does too much, and then you get into the meta where a ton of people are playing 60 cards versus 60 cards, and then it becomes chonky because whoever mills first naturally, then the other people will catch up for free with grass. It's this weird back and forth self-balance that I actually like, but it's toxic to Yu-Gi-Oh! The Forceful Sentry looks at the opponent's hand and shuffles one back. That card is absurd. It doesn't even go to the graveyard for those resources. It's back into the deck, and you get to, like, control what hand traps and that kind of stuff they'd be in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in the day. Still a huge advantage to know how you're going to play back row and what you don't have to play around. Like, you used to have a poker element. Does he have Mirror Force? Does he have Torrential? And this took that completely away. So, yeah, it deserves to stay. Just getting to know what you aren't playing around is absurd. And I think we're actually going to wrap this video up on just the bans. We're 35 minutes in here, so the rest of the list may be a video for another day. Let's get through the traps and not just bore your ears off. Well, chat's at 630. Last Turn is a card that basically summons a monster for your opponent while you have one, but people have monsters like Jowgen back in the day or Fossil Dyna today that don't allow the opponent to summon, and then you just win and the battle doesn't happen, so you end up winning, period. No, do the whole list? Maybe. Good content? Alright. Compliments will get you everywhere. Return from the Different Dimension is slow by today's standards, but it would allow an opponent for half their life points to bring back 5 of their banished cards, you know, and put them back on the field, and realistically get, like, OTKs or the ability to do things, and I think it needs to stay here for the resources that it would offer, but still, by modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It feels a little slow. It feels just a bit slow to me. Royal Oppression is a card that got banned, and it has this, you pay 800 to stop a special summon, but both players get to use it, but the person who sets up with it first sets up their board and has special summoned, so you're realistically stopping the opponent, and they need to reverse lock you in order for it to work for them. Yeah, I think it needs to stay banned. You could throw up your whole board and just stop your opponent. Like, look at Summon Limit in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's a problem. This is an insane floodgate. Self-Destruct Button is a troll card that ends up with ties, and back then you actually didn't have a tie. You had to play till somebody won, so the entire tournament would hold up because of this card. Even with ties, this card's only purpose would be to ruin somebody's days. There really are people who show up to tournaments like that. I'm gonna ruin 4 people's days, knock them out of the tournament contention, or steal life from them. Yeah, players like that. I would rather not see that return to Yu-Gi-Oh! Sixth Sense is a card that will either mill a bunch or draw a bunch of cards for you, and either way that's an advantage for a lot of players. Time Steal stops the opponent from drawing, and you could also loop that in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! But back in the day, just getting ahead in advantage, it was kind of a win more card, but at the same time, like, if you could start locking them down, it was just more fuel on the fire. And does it deserve to stay banned? Probably, in case something degenerate is completed with hand loops, Aqua Dolphin, and those kinds of decks. And for Noble Knights is hand looping also. You don't want extra tools for that. Trap Dustshoot gets to see the hand and shuffle a card back on the opponent's turn, so they can draw their 6th card and you take care of a problem card. Definitely deserves to stay. And people try to argue now that it's only good if you go first, you gotta win the dice roll. Still, in the side deck, you get to decide, you know, game 2 or game 3 when that's going to happen, and that's a powerful tool. Ultimate Offering for 500 life points. You can keep normal summoning and tribute summoning, and that's just crazy to be able to do. I think it deserves to stay there. And Vanity's Emptiness is a card that stops special summoning at all until the owner yeets a card off the field or the opponent hard draws Spell and Trap Destruction. Floodgate cards deserve to stay on the list. I don't care what you say, chat. Definitely deserves to stay here. Can you guys join the conversation? If I'm going to keep going, Twitch chat needs to stop counting. I know it's a meme. You hit 699. At this point, let's actually have a discussion because I'm going crazy doing this by myself besides just YouTube chat. YouTube chat is talking with me, but Twitch chat ain't. So if we're going to continue this video, come on, Twitch chat, get with it over here. The Exodia pieces are, all the limbs are at 1. It's a win condition outside of being able to attack. I think this definitely deserves to be unlimited because the vanilla pieces, it actually hurts you to draw more of them rather than get into them. But it would be kind of crazy theory to see if the head did go to 3. I think the head needs to stay at 1. Armageddon Knight is a Dark Foolish Burial on legs. It's a warrior, one of the biggest typings in Yu-Gi-Oh! Accessible by Isolde. Dark Warrior became a huge deck, and it just helps the resource game way too much to be able to dump things from the deck to grave. Grepher also has a similar place on this list because of that, if we're going to jump ahead real quick, and both deserve to be on the list for that. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially dark typing, want cards in the graveyard, you can mix that with chaos, deserves to be on the list. Speaking of Chaos Dragons, Black Dragon Collapse Serpent is on here because it's able to just banish things from graveyard and get instant ability, but also with Link Summoning, continue up into the Light Dragon, Dark Dragon, Black Dragon. You're able to continue that route, and that's too much power in Yu-Gi-Oh! To continue on. Seer and Graph are both Burning Abyss monsters that ended up on here together. Seer is able to recur your graveyard resources. Graph is able to get from deck, and both of them earn their place on this limited list because they're some of the most powerful BAs. Could they be more free right now? Possibly, but I think they deserve to still be on here. I think that you have Cherubini, you have all this power in Burning Abyss, you still have recent tops in history surprising everybody. I think the rank 3 decks and the link-up power that they have are very resilient, and you don't need to give them more options. Cyberstein, pay 5,000 to access the extra deck. People are able to basically search him out of the deck or use Saryuja multiple times to draw into him. He gets Veilered and Impermed a lot, and his effect just gets negated, but when he goes off, it's huge payoff. People freaked out when he originally came back. He could go back to 3 at this point. He just gets stuffed in the face for paying 5,000, and he's not consistent enough. The Danger Engine, these are the 3 best. Jackalope accesses 1 from the deck. Nessie gets you 1 to your hand, and Tsuchinoko brings itself back. They're all the best dangers because they self-replace when they're hit. They're free to reveal and get, like, hit out of the hand. And so all of these are just free attempts at drawing or getting advantage. And that's why they're all at 1. The Danger Engine is seriously dangerous in Yu-Gi-Oh! And they've earned their spot here as much as I loved playing the engine. Dynamite Knight! We talked about True Dracos having extra spots on this list. Dynamite Knight gets the traps. The traps are some of the most powerful cards in terms of interaction. And I think that maybe I'm True Draco scared. He deserves to stay on the list with that. Pankratops was a common 2600 body that's able to tribute itself off the field to destroy a card and special summon itself for free. This is just way too powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! I loved that it was a budget option, but with this card, man, the ability to dodge Veiler, to dodge Imperm, to be able to just beat over things at 2600, that is so much. It's crazy what he can do. Exodia, the Forbidden One, we mentioned alternate win con, probably deserves to stay at 1. Gen X Ali Birdman is able to recur your resources way too well, and I don't think it needs to come back at 3. He ended up in a lot of the good old synchro decks back in the day, and is he problematic? Maybe. We'd have to see. We'd have to see. Infernity Archfiend. We have Archfiend support coming. People are thinking it might move off the list just to help with that, but ripping that off the top is so crazy, and giving them more chances to set things and draw into it, I don't really want to see it. Morphing Jar is a card that we talked about. Empty Jar needs to stay here. You don't need to boost the consistency of deck out decks, even with modern hand traps. You don't need to let them have way more chances at that. Night Assailant is a card that ended up on here purely, it's a Maneater bug. What's the problem? Whenever he's into the graveyard, he gets another flip effect monster back, and with another Night Assailant, it doesn't say except for Night Assailant, he infinite loops with himself, and for advantage reasons, that's a problem. Phantom Skyblaster generates tokens on his, I believe it's just normal summon, I could be mistaken. And with that, it's dependent on what you've set up. And so you can fill the field with tokens. I don't think he's that big of a problem. He became a problem with Thunder Dragon, and that's kind of gone and evolved. But maybe there's decks that would really love to see all that advantage early on consistently, and they don't like to depend on it. But he's phased out for the most part at 1 here, so maybe he should stay there. Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon just got an errata. It will likely see itself off the list to 3. It is now a hard once per turn effect, so it really shouldn't be here. But it got here because it was able to recur its effects over and over and over whenever you would like get rid of it and revive it again and that sort of stuff. So yeah, definitely deserved to be here at 1 and deserved the errata, although I wish it was just a retrain and you'd ban him. Salamangreat Gazelle, again, they needed to hit the powers of Salamangreats. We mentioned with Mirage Stalio, Gazelle is one of the best cards to see in the deck, and that's pretty much why it's here for now. Deserves to stay here for now. One day can probably be free. Servant of Endymion is an absurd card for Pendulums. I think it's, how many cards from structure decks actually end up on here, like Last Will and Servant? But as one of the new cards for Pendulums out of there, the ability to just summon Master from the deck and get the advantage that it would give, at 1, you can still even kind of search it, but it's crazy as a resource game and probably does deserve to be here. Speedroid Terratop originally ended up here for MX Saber Invoker's Sins, lowering the consistency so that if you're playing stuff like Takum Tomborg to go with it, you have as much of a chance to draw your brick as your enabler, and Terratop by modern standards, Speedroids are still kind of insane. I know, I'm saying that, but they are kind of insane, and rank 3 decks are kind of insane. They tried to peel this off to 2 in Japan, and then Salamangreat was using it way too much, and they knocked it back to 1. So I do think it earned its spot here. Spiral Quick Fix is machine dupable and a really good resource game for Spirals. I do not want to see this peeled off the list, unless it's maybe to 2. I don't want to give them an excuse to run Machine Dupe again. Tempest is the only Dragon Ruler off experimentally. He's been doing okay, but Dragoonides are getting a huge upgrade with their structure deck. Let's look forward to see how Tempest interacts with that, because it is still a really good card. True King Lithosagem was on the ban list for a while and got limited, and Dinosaurs actually took down a YCS recently, and I think True King Lost World Dinos and other variants, you also have the Simorg Dinos, they're all really good, and I think Litho being able to rip the extra deck on top of give Dinos advantage is crazy, so you don't necessarily need this at more. It's consistently being seen in Dinos' hands. 1 is a pretty good place for it for now until Dinosaurs get some hits, or just keep it at the balance it is at. White Dragon Weaver Buster is the counterpart to Collapse Serpent. Sorry, I need to scroll down, yeah. He's the counterpart to Collapse Serpent and the Chaos Dragon resource game. That's why it's on there. Zodiac Wrap here is able to get extra advantage for Zoo, and with Link climbing, Zoo's actually a bit of a problem. We've seen that with Megaclops and Zoo Striker for a little bit. I think that the Zodiacs will see more peel offs with the list to help with Tri-Brigade maybe be a bit of an engine, because Tri-Brigade is set up to be an engine right now. We'll see if Zoo comes back a little bit, but man, people really look back at Zoo format like, they're having PTSD, so Konami is really reluctant to work with Zoo. Eva Gishki stuff is really just big OTK boy. Is it an FD? There is an FDK with this, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, there's an FDK with these guys too. They deserve to stay on the list. I know this is my least informed opinion all night long, but they deserve to stay on. Dragon Buster recently got hit. A lot of people were confused, but it's because Konami was scared with it moving into the Master Rule. I think it doesn't deserve to be here. I think you can peel it off just fine. Gem Knight Master Diamond is here purely because of Gem Knight FDK. It was taking top slots at events, and anytime an FDK tends to pop up like that, even if it's unique, bam, bam, it's going on the list. DeLorne has loops with its effects that are a bit degenerate, so DeLorne did earn its place here on the list. The ability to bounce and then recur DeLorne, yeah, you don't want multiple of those going on. Ignister Prominence, the Blasting Draco Slayer back from Pepe format. This is a huge synchro that's able to pop scales for free and get rid of opponents' stuff non-targetingly, but it also has recursion with your ability to get resources out of the deck, and that's not a hard once per turn if I recall, so using Pisty, you can actually link up even further. I don't want to see multiple Ignisters for not only the power of non-targeting removal, but the ability to get resources for Dragon Link. Psyframe Lord Omega is hand loop fuel. Also, it can be sent from the extra deck to the graveyard by stuff like Dogmatica to take care of opponents' graveyard resources. Very powerful card. TG Hyper Librarian is just draw with synchros. That was too much back in the day. They finally unbanned it. It is limited currently, and I think deserves to stay limited. Trishula, also a very powerful dragon, made mostly for hand loops. I think needs to stay at 1 or none. Hand loop cards are very powerful, and the two of the synchro ones ending up here. You can also overlay Trishula as a level 9 into a rank 9 for True King of All Calamities, stopping the opponent from playing even further. So yeah, its ability to rip from hand, and also graveyard and field, like, you know, just, I was just saying hand, but like, it has turn 1 plays, unlike the ritual Trishula. Its ability to tear things up is just on another scale. Beatrice is, you can hard make her with level 6s like Malicious, and instantly get resource games, or get the ability to disrupt your opponent on their turn, and with that 2500 defense, it's a bit much, and we'll line up the field. Is it 28? 1 second, it's been a while. Beatrice, I know, I'm slowly going down in quality of content live, losing my voice doing this video. I think it's 2800, actually. 26? Oh, we're just wrong twice. Yeah, she is 2800. I'm not wrong twice, smile. Pog you. Anyways, she's a really great card in terms of the ability to also replace herself as a resource when she goes with another powerful monster. Daigusto Emerald is able to give you back your resources for draws or continue to special summon stuff. With Link monsters, there are high-level non-effect Link monsters that it can revive so that you could Link summon further. And it finally got peeled off the ban list. Could we see it more? No, you don't want to see Emerald shuffling Emeralds with itself to create long-term loops. Like, you could, like, use one Emerald, use it as link fodder with something you brought back, summon another Emerald, shuffle back Emerald and other cards, and then draw. That's way too much power. Totally Awesome got moved here as we headed towards Master Rule 5. Bahamut Shark is able to summon it. I wish they just hit the shark and not the toad, but I feel like that's why the toad got hit. Direct Master Rule 5 stuff. Zodiac Trident got unlimited, from the ban to limit. And here it is at 1. It's interactive in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not taking over or anything. It's been fine so far, but they also hit another piece of Zoo to bring it back to see how it would do. Could it go to more? I like them having to manage their resource. They have to be careful with their other pieces, like Tiger Mortar, like that kind of stuff. So they have to be careful with what they're doing with Trident, and I like it at 1 where it's at. A Hero Lives is a card where you pay 4,000 life points to summon a hero from deck, and Stratos is at 3. This was the cost of Stratos. I think with Malicious at 2, it would be perfectly fine to bring this out to 3, and I don't think it would be doing as much as people think it would be doing with Malicious at 2. Card Destruction is kind of another one of those empty jar cards, is more so why it's at 1. It hasn't seen much play since it got put to 1, but it helps people dig for further resources while also eliminating the opponents. But as we've spoken about graveyard resources, that's kind of the balance. People can get effects off it being dumped, and there's counters to it like Ash Blossom. So I think it's actually kind of fine where it's at. I freaked out when it got unbanned, but it's not done much. Card of Demise is an absurd stun draw card that is way overpowered and deserves its spot on the list, if not even harsher. People used to beg for this to be banned. It's what enabled True Draco to play for so long. Definitely deserves to be at 1 or none. Chain Strike is a burn card that helps strategies get that final 2,000 burn damage that they need, and I think strategies that end the turn before the opponent's really playing should be on this list at 1 or none. Dimensional Fissure is a floodgate spell that banishes all monsters that would be sent to the graveyard. A lot of monsters only get their effects when sent to the graveyard, so this is very powerful at robbing graveyard resources, and floodgates just aren't fun to play against in Yu-Gi-Oh! Divine Wind of the Mist Valley, I'm pretty sure this has the ability to loop cards that would like go to hand or do something crazy that's very niche off. This is another one of those cards that I'm not as educated on, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to stay here. Draco Face Off, you have to play a brick in order to get your ability. It does put a card on board. I think this card would be fine to come back to 3, and it's at 3 in the OCG, though, as you do have to play your vanilla bricks for it. Dragonic Diagram is a huge resource for not just the True Dracos, but the True Kings. I regret that the True Dracos and True Kings are both so powerful that this card needs to be here, but that's where it's at, and I think it does need to stick. Emergency teleport. Summoning psychic tuners to the field for free is a non-hard once per turn. This needs to stay here in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, but they may unlimit it to push other decks like that escape. You have Final Countdown, a card that is literally an alternate win con. In 20 turns, you win the game. Mystic Mind makes this very powerful. I don't want to see people drawing this even more. Needs to stay on the list. Foolish Burial is a card that just reaches into your deck and gives you resources to the graveyard. Yeah, this needs to stay at 1, but it's still a really cool card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Card design, and I like seeing it played here and there. Gateway of the Six, if you put it at more than 1, you can kind of get infinite counters and loop with it, and that's a bit of a problem for Yu-Gi-Oh! So that's why it stays on the list here at 1. I think Japan did put it to 3, though. I'm not sure if it still is or not. I'd have to look at their list. I think it deserves to stay at 1, though, even as one of the original 6 Samurai players. Gold Sarcophagus is originally a prize card. It ended up on here. Now Necrofaces to 3. It ended up here because of Thunder Dragon and Thunder Dino getting the options to also do Giant Rex. I think Thunder Dragon's a lot less relevant. You could see it come off, but with Necroface at 3, I don't want to see it come off. Infernity Launcher needs to stay here. I don't care how bad you want to sell or play Infernity, needs to stay on here. It's way insane of a resource to be able to summon 2 monsters for the 1 card in that deck, especially with how many tuners are in the deck and the routes that deck has in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Instant Fusion's a card that was a mainstay of a lot of metagames. You pay 1,000 life points and reach into the extra deck and are able to summon a card. This card, no matter what, it's a 1-for-1. It would force a negate, it would force your opponent to do something to the card itself, and if it brought something out from the extra deck, Thousand Eyes would deal with the card, and then you'd link up. So it would always be kind of either a 1-for-1 or a +1, and a back and forth Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not only a starter card, but an extender card. Needs to stay on the list, I think, at that point. Very similar to Pankratops in that aspect. Into the Void, just degenerate draw cards that helped FTK decks or decks get extra advantage, and spell counters and that kind of thing. Definitely needs to stay here. Magical Midbreaker Field allowed combo decks to ignore Ghost Ogre and Disruption, and was very powerful for build the board workshops. That's how this ended up here. Probably should stay here. Mind Control is the less powerful change of heart we talked about. You can't tribute the cards you take, and they can't attack either, I believe, but still here it is on the list, because with Link Summoning, taking those resources and linking up for just free and taking care of your opponent's problems was a big deal. Monster Reborn is on here because you just take your opponent's cards and win with them, but also your own self-recursion when they dealt with your bonus monster, you get to deal with it again! It's just a really crazy extender and finisher card in one go. 1 day of peace, it stops people from getting to do damage by both attacking or burning for a whole turn, and both players draw a card. That ability to stave off the opponent is very strong in Yu-Gi-Oh! And this is usually used in degenerate strategies like Exodia or Burn. 1-for-1 is a card that accesses so many powerful cards. Yeah, level 1's very powerful. Neptubis, for example, accessible from deck by 1-for-1. And the ability to special it as well. With tuners in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Going into Halki 5-Brax, it needs to stay on here. And I'm pretty sure it ended up here all the way back from plant format with like Spore and Glow Bulb. Pantheism of the Monarchs, it's tied to Monarchs as an archetype, but it's not only a draw card, but a resource card, so it does a lot for them. A lot of people want to see it off. I think Monarchs usually win by floodgating, though, so that's not my favorite, but I could see it coming off and seeing what a budget deck like that would do in this metagame. Raigeki is at 1 and really could go to 3 at this point. It was originally on here in the ban list and went to limit for destroying everything alongside Dark Hole, and now Dark Hole is off the list perfectly fine. I don't think this would do much in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Besides force negate on build-a-board workshops. Reasoning is on here for its ability to just mill so many cards and graveyard resources because it bypasses cards that can't be summoned by it until you get to a card that can be summoned by it. So, like Infernoids and other decks enjoy way too much advantage off of it, and that's why it's here still limited today. Reinforcement of the Army is... Warrior searching for free is very powerful. Like Sign Up Mining for Cybers has to pitch a card and is a hard once per turn. You're able to just search any level 4 or lower warrior, and there's a lot of good ones we talked about that are limited, like Greffer and Armageddon Knight, that they want to cut down the ability to use, and you have Isolde anyways to do combos with. Salmon Great Circle, they hit Salad a lot, okay? They hit Salad a lot. Let's just get over the fact that that structure deck was very powerful. Scapegoat's on here for the token ability to go into the extra deck, and in more tempo formats, you would be able to, like, end phase Scapegoat, go into a huge rank 4 for just the cost of a couple cards in the extra deck. I think it could peel off a little more here now, but decks like Alter Deck guys getting an extra power card like this would be a bit much, because it's usually decks like that that are able to stall that look at cards like this. Sekka's Light is a card that ended up in decks that didn't need spell or traps like Burning Abyss and Thunder Dragon, to where you could just play free draws off of it and then also get a hand fixer on top. So it was a bit much. Does it deserve to be here? I think giving up all the rest of your spell and traps is a very balanced thing to put Sekka's Light back at 3 of, but Konami finds a problem with that as a draw engine. Set rotation, so a lot of people think it actually ended up on here because of evenly match, because if they go to battle phase, you could activate set rotation, give them a field spell, and they can activate evenly match, so it was to sell evenly match. But field spells, again, are very powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! And forcing a field spell to your opponent's zone that they may be not able to activate ever, so they can't play their own field spells, as well as your own, it's kind of a big deal, and that's why it's at 1. Sky Strikers, again, hit multiple ways. It's because it was Sky Striker the engine, not just the deck that was a problem. The first tops were Sky Striker Trickstar in droves, like 16 of them. So drones would help that be more of an engine than a deck, not even having to really play Ray if you didn't want to. And multi-role is their resource game. I think Sky Striker stuff is still too hot, too recent. They're even taking online tournaments down during these metagames. Deserves to be on here. Slash Draw was an FTK enabler in terms of how crazy it could be. Definitely deserves to stay on here. Spiral Resort, it protects spirals from being targeted, and on top of it gives free resources. Definitely deserves to stay on this list. Symbol of Heritage, similar to Premature, when it has to be destroyed for the monster to be destroyed, so if you bounce it, you can loop it, and that's problematic. Terraforming is on here because field spells are so powerful. We've mentioned that several times. So the ability to just search any field spell, this is like a blank copy in your deck and thins your deck to help you get to other cards. Trickstar Light Stage, I'm sorry, deserved it. The Trickstars were getting used as a bit of an engine in Orcust, and the ability to go Light Stage, lock down a back row, get a normal summon, get a special summon, have a link to, that's very powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. So I don't like this card. It is a free advantage and the ability to lock down a back row. Upstart Goblin, it's kind of like playing blanks in the deck, allows you to play 37 cards just for giving your opponent life points. Zodiac Barrage got hit when Trident got off the list, so they're testing the waters, but this is an absurd enabler. Getting to pop stuff can also be advantageous depending on the card, and it's not only, you know, a starter card, an extender card, it does so much for that deck. Probably deserves to be limited, especially if they're considering strengthening the deck. Imperial Order got eroded, came off the list. It's had its moments within the metagames, still a very powerful Floodgate card, but with the errata, a lot of people end up dying on their own sword because you have to keep paying those life points. Macro Cosmos is a banish Floodgate for all cards like we talked about with Dimensional Fissure, except it does spells and traps also, stopping anything from hitting the graveyard. That's a bit much to just play with no graveyard in Yu-Gi-Oh! Today. The hand traps can't activate for a lot of them. Magical Explosion is an OTK card, realistically an FTK, because all your opponent gets to do is draw. This activates on them and they're dead, so that's why it's limited, and honestly I think maybe should be banned, depending. You had, as recently, it was it would be called Monarch FTK, but they could use Explosion and stuff to do that. Metaverse is on here because it also searches field spells. You sense a theme with card creation in the ban list here yet, guys? So it's able to go and search or activate a field spell from the deck, and there's a lot of Floodgate-like field spells like Secret Village, Necro Valley, or mainly Mystic Mine. Red Reboot is on here, I think mostly to sell Lightning Storm like Harpy's Feather Duster. It went to 1. It really hurts back row decks, though. It kind of just shuts them down, and it feels so good to activate, but like for half your life points, you shut down their back row for the turn, making them basically unplayable. So I think Harpy's Feather Duster might actually be healthier than Red Reboot. Do I think this deserved its hit? I liked activating it, but yes. Skill Drain is at 1. It shuts off all effect monsters on the field. 1,000,000% deserves to be on the list, and is still annoying today against Eldritch decks and other decks that like to use its power to take down the opponent. True King's Return, another True Draco card on here. It gives them resource after resource by bringing back cards not only on their turn, but your turn to be able to tribute with as well and destroy it. These cards all do like 3 things when it comes to the True Draco cards. It's a lot. While Revealing Light lets you pay any amount of life points, and that can be very powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! Depending on the cards that you need to get that life point gap and difference. So it's limited at 1, I think, just to prevent some crazy combos. And finally, we are towards the end of the list. So let's expand here. We have Destiny Hero Malicious Semide recently from 3. It just gave heroes so much power and access, and heading into the new Master Rule, Konami was probably scared of things like Beatrice getting abused early on. Tour Guide recently went from 1 to 2. I think it could move to 3. Again, rank 3 engines kind of go towards link spam engines in modern day, but you have so many counter cards to this. But no longer is it the end of the turn, like this is face up, oh no, I can't summon my BAs, I'm gonna summon this level 3 or that level 3 and continue. Widow Anchors at 2, could maybe go to 3 at this point, but Sky Strikers are doing just fine in the rogue section how they are. But yeah, it's kind of here to test the waters after so many hits to Sky Strikers. And then on the last ban list, this is all that happened. Multi-Faker to 3, Unicorn to 3, Kanahawk to 3. They were on the list because Altergeist had done very well at tournaments overall, but they decided to release them. Unicorn is a walking floodgate against extra deck monsters and also a resource tool from hand to grave for recursion, but they wanted to push ritual monsters, I think mostly with the Dogmatica. A lot of people were looking forward to Nekroz builds, and they're pushing ritual summoning further in the future with Drytrons. And then Kanahawk, I have no idea why they let that dirty bird go, but here he is. Thank you for making it all the way here till the end on why everything is on the FNL list. Way more educationally so than when I did this 2 years ago with a drunk stream. This has been a very long video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. So many people said they wanted a serious take on this. They didn't know Yu-Gi-Oh! History, why things might have ended up here, or the power that they offered, or the formats that went into it. If you made it to this point, please subscribe if you haven't already. Join the live streams, please, and take part with these crazy counters in chat and be able to have your voice make it in the video forever. And let me know if you have anything to add, of course, to why things are banned, unbanned, and if you think they should be, you know, off this list, of course, as is always part of the fun with ban list discussions.